advocating for Americans in Mexico.
First and foremost is always the safety and security of American citizens.
Plus expanding services for migrants at the border.
Everything we do in Mexico is going to be under one roof.
And how these issues factor into the election season.
More people today support what the president's done on immigration than before.
The immigration system is broken, and Washington has failed us.
Hello and welcome to Arizona 360. I'm Lorraine Rivera. Thanks for joining us in Nogales. This week our coverage brings us back to the border, a topic poised to receive increased attention as the 2020 campaign season ramps up. A number of U.S. citizens can vote from Mexico, where the U.S. State Department estimates more than 1 million Americans live. To understand more about how the U.S. aids its citizens abroad, we traveled to the U.S. Consulate in Nogales, Sonora, where we spoke with Consul General Virginia Staub for her first on-camera interview with the media in Arizona.
We have basically three priorities down here. First and foremost is always the safety and security of American citizens that are either living here or visiting here. Our second priority is really to increase security for both countries, for both the United States and Mexico. And then third is to streamline trade, do what we can for American business, and look at investment opportunities down here, Americans that are doing business on this side of the border and looking after their interests.
Oftentimes we see travel advisories or threat levels. Mexico is facing an unprecedented level of violence at this point. What sorts of things should we consider when we are traveling here? I mean, how seriously should we take those advisories?
So we do conduct, as you mentioned, Lorraine, we do conduct a travel advisory for every country around the world. Mexico in general is a level 2, which is exercise increased caution. The Sonora state is level 3 at the moment, which is reconsider travel, and that's based on some recent incidents that have happened here. Mexico is safe. I live here with my children, and we have a wonderful time. But you do have to behave accordingly. It's like any big city in the United States. You need to be careful.
As a precaution, Staub recommends U.S. citizens traveling internationally sign up online for the department's Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, known as STEP. They can register their trip with the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate so the State Department can get in touch in case there's an emergency.
There isn't anything that we do with it because Americans have expressed concern of privacy, etc. It's only in case of a natural disaster or some sort of political unrest that we know where to start looking or we know how to help people.
Some of the headlines that many of us have seen are the mass graves in Rocky Point, the family that involved the women and children who were killed. That falls under your area of responsibility, correct?
It does. And so for the graves near Rocky Point, we've gone out and visited them. It hasn't happened yet, but in case Americans are located in that area, we want to be able to say we've seen it, we know what it is. We're working with authorities to follow judicial processes, and that's our area. So we believe we need to explain that to Americans. We have not been to Bavis Bay. That's on our travel advisory that we're not allowed to go to that area, but we have been in very close contact with the family. We help them immediately afterwards, and we continue to provide services to them. It was a real tragedy for both Mexico and the United States.
They were dual citizens. How exactly does that play into the investigative phase that's occurring right now?
So the investigation is ongoing, as you mentioned. Mexico considers them Mexicans, and we consider them Americans. And so the fact of their dual nationality doesn't impact our services on either side.
Staub said the United States offered to assist in the investigation, and Mexico accepted. The FBI is currently working with Mexican authorities. Though some arrests have been made, the investigation remains ongoing. Should Americans be alarmed when they hear those sorts of headlines so closely, to their region here in southern Arizona?
I understand the concern, and I understand that folks are very preoccupied and worried about their safety here in Mexico. That could happen in the United States, quite honestly. And so we believe that Americans need to be informed. They need to read our travel advisory. That's why we're down here as well, is to really give information about what areas are safer and what areas we encourage folks not to go.
In the city of Nogales, Sonora, the consulate has also taken steps to advance the lives of its residents, regardless of their nationalities. Last year, it teamed up with the University of Arizona to run a program aimed at developing more women entrepreneurs. And at her previous post in Guatemala, Staub also led the State Department's efforts to deter children from getting involved with gangs. When did the State Department really start to explore these other avenues as a part of its work?
So the State Department has always focused on building the next generation and really investing in other countries so that it alleviates some of the problems that are in the United States. For example, if we're able to empower youth in Guatemala and we're able to keep them out of gangs and make sure that they are future generations for their own country, they might be less incentivized to come to the United States to look for a future there. Many of these people, I find, from speaking to them, they want to stay in their country, they want to stay with their families, but they need options, they need hope, they need opportunities. And we try to provide some of those opportunities to defray that irregular migration that is happening.
Currently, the consulate is focused on talks with stakeholders in Sonora about labor shortages in its factories and hiring opportunities for migrants in need of jobs. Staub says the industry has about 2,500 vacancies. That advocacy also extends to Nogales' ports of entry, where billions of dollars worth of goods pass through each year and contribute to Mexico's status as the #1 trading partner for both the U.S. and Arizona. What's been your role in making sure that wait times don't get excessive, but that trade continues to function, but that security is a top priority at the ports?
So it's really advocacy. More than anything, speaking to everybody, using my diplomatic skills of speaking to folks on this side of the border and the other side of the border, figuring out what are the hurdles, what are the limits, and how can we come about overcoming those. I believe that we need to use state-of-the-art technology to improve our ports of entry and to make sure that they are the 21st century ports that we can make most agile to accommodate all of this trade, and not just trade, but regular Mexicans and regular Americans that are crossing in the passenger lanes.
Locally, how would you rate things here?
So my job I always see as advocacy for this area. There's a reason why we're overseas, and there's a reason so that we can share the reality that is on the ground. Because unfortunately, some policy folks that are very far away in our nation's capitals, both in Mexico and in the United States, will make policies without fully understanding exactly what the reality is. And so we try to share with that what's really happening at the port of entry so that they have that sense. Because I think if we do sit down and we do talk about things, we have so much more in common than we have differences. And I'm confident that folks will come to some compromise and some agreement.
Okay. Consul Virginia Staub, thank you.
Thank you so much, Lorraine. Nice having you here.
After leaving the consulate, our attention turned from American citizens abroad to those trying to immigrate into the U.S., as well as the policies regulating their entry. It brought us to a familiar organization. As we've reported, the Kino Border Initiative provides humanitarian aid to deportees and migrants at its comedor, about a quarter-mile from the Mariposa port of entry. Now it's preparing for a long-awaited move across the street to a larger outreach center that offers nearly 50 times more space. Ahead of its opening, we got a tour from Father Sean Carroll. Inside the dining hall, towering paintings created by a local artist serve as its focal point.
The architect's vision and the artist's vision too is really to create something that was warm, and our hope is that when people walk in here and they see these murals, they feel that spirit of welcome, not only from us, our staff and volunteers here, but from God as well.
Faith coupled with determination led Kino Border Initiative to this milestone. Father Sean says the nonprofit successfully raised nearly $3 million over the last few years. It purchased this building in the summer of 2018 and began renovations a few months later.
Obviously, we're sitting in the dining area right now, so we'll be able to seat 160 people here.
In addition to being able to serve more people meals, Kino Border Initiative also has enough space to bolster its other services, like dozens of bunk beds that will allow it to shelter women and children upstairs and men downstairs. Who ideally goes in this space here?
So we're going to have men in this space, and 72 beds, so 36 bunk beds, and made by an ironworker here in Nogales, Sonora. So they're made by hand, and so they've come out really well. They're really solid and sturdy, and really happy with the work that he's doing. We've also had a group of women making quilts. So every bed in this shelter and the one upstairs for women and children is going to have a handmade quilt.
Obviously, there can be liabilities when you have so many people in one space. How will Kino Border Initiative work to ensure that families are safe and secure when they're under this roof?
So we'll have security here at night, And we're continuing to develop our volunteer program, and so I think we'll have volunteers just to be present in case a child gets sick or there's some type of emergency. So really, we're in the process of looking at our protocols and procedures for working in the different spaces, because we've had a very different context up to now in terms of working in the Commodore and working in the home that we rent for our shelter for women and children. But now we're going to be in a space where everything we do in Mexico is going to be under one roof.
Other features include 2 classrooms where the center can offer programs geared toward adults and children.
So we're going to be doing job training in this classroom and the other classroom that we have. So whether it's English or whether it's computer training, that could happen in these classrooms. But we're also hoping to offer some programming for the children.
So it's recognizing that people are here for an extended period and maybe they could get something out of it while they're...
Absolutely. One thing we're seeing is that there's so many children who have come with their families and they're not in school, and they're with their families on the street during the day, either outside our current center or going to home or from home to our center. And so what can we do that's formative, that's instructive, and that really provides, I think, a positive structure for them.
The new center also includes several offices that provide the luxury of privacy, where guests can meet with attorneys and social workers.
And part of the challenge is that when migrants, for example, are documenting an abuse with one of our staff people, or they're speaking to an attorney and they're talking about why they fled their state here in Mexico, or why they fled from Central America and the violence that they suffered there, or the threats or dangers to their lives or to the lives of their families that they experienced, it's very hard, very sensitive, and hard to do in such a public space. But in this new facility, we're going to have office spaces for those different services. And so when a migrant's speaking with an attorney or talking about abuse they experienced, they can do that in the privacy of an office and in a very open and welcoming space. And so we just feel wonderfully about that.
Ever-changing patterns in immigration at Arizona's border are woven into Kino Border Initiative's history. That's evident in the people who walk through its doors each day. Years ago, staff and volunteers served mostly single men from Mexico recently deported from the U.S. These days, they're more used to aiding an influx of families from southern Mexico and beyond here to seek asylum.
The dynamic has really shifted where we still have people been deported, but fewer than before. A lot of families coming north, particularly from the southern state of Guerrero right now, so in southwestern Mexico. And then since January 2nd, the U.S. government has been sending people back to Nogales under the migrant protection protocols. These are people who have requested asylum in the U.S. They've passed their credible fear interview, but instead of being released to a sponsor or a family member with a notice to appear, they're being sent back to Mexico. And at least in the case of Nogales, they're being given court dates in El Paso, Texas. And so they have to find a way to Ciudad Juarez in order to access the port there on their court date and in order to have their case adjudicated.
Obviously, the hope is that you wouldn't have to have this, but you have it. Do you see the need continuing?
I see the need continuing over time, and certainly with the current policies that are being implemented and probably other policies as well in the future that really, I think, disrespect the dignity of the people that we're serving.
The Trump administration enacted its migrant protection protocols early last year and gradually expanded it to 7 ports of entry. As a result, more than 56,000 migrants have been returned to Mexico while they wait for their court dates, including about 160 migrants sent to Nogales, Sonora since the start of 2020. Rafael Carranza has reported on the program for the Arizona Republic. 160 people in Nogales, Sonora. What's the impact to that community?
So it's 160 in the first month, just to be clear. And like I said, the program has been around for a month, but the expectation is that number is going to grow. And so a lot of the the nonprofits that help migrants in Nogales, Sonora are concerned about what the future looks like, because there are already thousands of migrants waiting to claim asylum. in the United States. So they're waiting, up to 3 months already in the shelters, which are already, filled to capacity. And then on top of that, you also have the Mexican deportees, who they're still these deportations are still taking place on a daily basis. So you have these three populations that are kind of mixing, not just in Nogales, but in all of the Mexican border cities, but certainly in a place like Nogales that doesn't have the infrastructure. There's a lot of concern over what that's going to look like once we have larger numbers of people sent back who are going to be waiting there for many more months as well.
Then they get a court date, but the time that elapses between could be 3 and 6 months. What are they doing while they wait before their time to see a judge?
And the Mexican government gives them a permit, but that permit is valid basically only until their court date. So if someone is sent back today and they have a court date for the end of April, the permit is going to be valid up until that point. And that permit, they can use it to find work. They can use it, if they have children, to send them to school. But there's still, a lot of uncertainty over that because, for example, if you are a mother with a child who is being sent back to Mexico, who are you going to leave that child with if you're going to go find work? So there's, just a lot of times many of these individuals have never been to Nogales before, or they're not familiar, they don't have that network there. And so even finding a job could be a challenge because they don't have, the child care, or they don't have anywhere to live. They might not have the money to be able to rent out a place during that time. And so that just adds to the difficulties, not just for the migrants, but also for the city and for the nonprofits that help the migrants.
And these are people who entered the U.S. unlawfully or requested asylum at a port of entry, correct?
Yes, I mean, I think the belief towards the very beginning was that, this was being applied, that MPP was only being applied to those who cross the border illegally. But we've seen, and certainly especially here in Nogales, is that it doesn't matter if you cross the border illegally or if you waited for 3 months to be able to talk to an immigration officer at the Nogales port of entry. They're being sent back regardless. The Border Patrol and Customs and Border Protection says they have a criteria, that they have to be eligible to be able to send back. But that still means that there's dozens of people. They can send up to 30 per day back to Nogales.
What happens when that court date comes? Where do they go, and what's the expectation after that?
That is probably one of the biggest challenges, and it's an unanswered question so far because since it has only been a month, the next dates, or the first court hearings that we have, are going to be coming up in the next few weeks. But the interesting thing about that is that the asylees that get sent back, they're not presenting themselves in Nogales. They have to travel to Ciudad Juarez because their court hearing is in El Paso. And so this is, almost 300 miles away. You have to go through some, frankly, very dangerous territory, especially in the mountainous areas between Sonora and Chihuahua, which is where we've had a lot of episodes of violence. I think the most prominent one is the death of 9 dual U.S. and Mexico citizens. And so, they have to get through that. The most accessible way to get there is probably by bus, but it's expensive. It could be very expensive if you don't have the money. And then once you get to El Paso, where do you go? To Juarez, I should say, where do you go? Do you go to one of the shelters? Where are you going to stay? And then so it's just a lot of challenges that they'll have to navigate, and oftentimes without any help.
The Department of Homeland Security says that 9 out of 10 asylum cases will be denied. Are you hearing from people who say, I'm not even going to bother, I might as well just go to my home country?
We've certainly been hearing a lot of that, and I think that a lot of the shelters that I've been speaking to, the directors, they're also very frank about having those types of conversations with someone who shows up wanting to claim asylum. They'll be able to talk to them. They'll have attorneys coming from the United States, from Arizona, a lot of different groups that volunteer and go down there and offer them legal advice. And oftentimes it may not, they may not qualify for asylum, and so at that point they'll have to decide if it's worth for them to pursue that, or if they want to remain in Nogales and kind of assimilate there, or head elsewhere in Mexico where they feel they'll be safer. But that's a conversation that we've seen or we've heard about happening very, very often.
I know it's very preliminary with this policy, but have any legal challenges been filed?
Yes, there's actually a legal challenge before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And so this is that, they're taking their time. The decision hasn't come down yet. And so once it does, we anticipate that it's going to have, wide repercussions if it's allowed to stay in place or if there's an injunction blocking the program. But as of now, the courts have not stepped in, so the program has been allowed to continue.
Okay, Rafael, thank you. At the same time as migrant protection protocols expand, work continues on taller walls along dozens of miles of Arizona's southern border. Increasingly, those projects have also come under heightened scrutiny. On the Organ Pipe Cactus National Monument, work is underway to install 43 miles of 30-foot bollard fencing. Controlled blasts led to uproar this week over concerns they damaged cultural sites that belong to the Tohono O'odham Nation. Video shared by Customs and Border Protection on Twitter shows some of the detonations. In another video tweeted earlier by U.S. Representative Raul Grijalva, he claims blasting on Monument Hill disrupted the graves of Apache warriors.
Where they were blasting the other day on Monument Hill is the resting place for primarily Apache warriors that had been involved in battles with the O'odham.
In a statement, Tohono O'odham Nation Chairman Ned Norris Jr. said the nation opposes construction that would, quote, irrevocably harm cultural sites, sacred sites, and the environment. He added that the federal agencies involved are in violation of their own policies since meaningful consultations have not been held. But Customs and Border Protection denies any wrongdoing and told Arizona Public Media the Tucson sector's Border Patrol tribal liaisons have constant communication with leadership from the nation. It also released a statement saying its own surveys found no biological, cultural, or historic sites within the project area. And, quote, CBP's environmental monitor is present during these activities to ensure that if any previously unidentified culturally sensitive artifacts are observed within the project area, the construction is halted and the appropriate stakeholders are notified to include tribal nations. The blasts are the latest in a series of alarms raised by environmental groups concerned the new wall projects pose a serious threat to sensitive ecosystems, like the Quito Boquito Springs in Organ Pipe, the San Bernardino National Wildlife Refuge in Cochise County, and the San Pedro River. Their opposition puts them at odds with President Trump.
As we speak, a long, tall, and very powerful wall is being built.
Trump touted the new construction in his State of the Union address and suggested crews plan to pick up the pace.
Early next year, we will have substantially more than 500 miles completed.
Supporters will likely hear something similar when the president rallies in Phoenix next week. As for how Arizona factors into his re-election bid, we turn to Republican National Committeeman Bruce Ash for more information. No primary, but President Trump is coming. The Democrats say maybe he's concerned about his position in the state. What do you say?
Well, they can say all they want. The president's here because Arizona is a target state. We don't take anything for granted. And the people here in Arizona, his fans really do love him, and they're looking forward to him coming to Arizona. It'd be a great event, and as they all are. And it's interesting, the MAGA rallies that I've been to, they look like the same kind of rallies that JFK or RFK might have had in the 1960s. The entire nature of the voters who support Republican candidates has really changed since Trump came on the scene in 2016.
If Arizona's a battleground state, is it up for grabs?
Well, I always run as if we were 10 points behind, even if we're 10 points ahead. And all of us, from the grassroots right up through party leadership and of course our principal, the president, they're all running very, very hard. We have to win this election. We've got 191 new federal judges appointed. I say to Republican supporters around the state whenever I talk with them, these elections are about a lot of things, but the things that are most important are judges, judges, and judges, and they will be again in this election.
All right, immigration is always a hot topic in a campaign. Arizona's a border state. Where do you see it fitting into the platform this 2020?
Well, more people today support what the president's done on immigration than before. The president has made promises, and he's kept his promises to build border fencing and protection along our southern border. And I think it's a positive thing, and he's managed to do it within the defense budget for the most part without spending a lot more money.
All right, what do you think the headline is out of the rally next week in Phoenix?
That's a great question. I think what we're going to find is unbelievable support. Veterans Memorial Coliseum is going to be filled, not just inside with the 8,000 or 10,000 people in there. There'll be 3 times as many people outside that Memorial Coliseum watching it on a big screen TV. That's the kind of support he has here in Arizona.
While the president looks to win in Arizona for a second time, Democrats will also try to turn the state blue. We learned more about their strategy from Felicia Rodolini, chair of the Arizona Democratic Party, who spoke to us via Skype. You know, the Republicans will say this is a conservative stronghold, and that will hold true come 2020.
Well, if it was a conservative stronghold, I don't think Donald Trump would be coming here as often as we've seen him over the last 3 years, and Martha McSally would be doing better in the polls. We know that independents, Republicans, and Democrats are very excited about voting for Mark Kelly, and we know that the momentum is in our favor because Democrats beat Republicans in 2018 because it was the Democrats talking about what's important to Arizonans, and that's values like affordable, accessible health care, great public education, preserving our Social Security, Medicaid, and Medicare, and making sure that we have jobs with living wages. Those issues are still important in 2020 as they were in 2018.
The Arizona Secretary of State's page shows that there are 118,000 registered Democrats, about 3,000 more than the Republicans, but still plenty who are registered as independents, 182,000. Do you anticipate they'll be shifting over to participate in the primary?
This makes sense to us from the results in 2018. Arizona Democrats are going to win only if they get a very big chunk of the independent vote to begin with. So this is the trend we've seen since 2016 when Hillary Clinton only lost to Donald Trump by less than 4%. So we think that momentum that started in 2016 will continue through the 2020.
Immigration is always at the forefront in a campaign season. Here we are, a border state. Where will it fit into the platform this year?
Well, a majority of Arizonans, just like a majority of Americans, know that the immigration system is broken and Washington has failed us. And what we've seen in Arizona is Donald Trump and Martha McSally using immigration as a launching pad for political attacks instead of really trying to solve the problems we see at the border. We know that in order for us to have a strong immigration system, we need reforms, we need border security, we need a pathway for citizenship for folks who play by the rules. We need to protect our 25,000 DACA kids in Arizona and make sure that we're strong at the border and that we treat people humanely.
That's all for now. Thanks for joining us. To get in touch, visit us on social media or send an email to Arizona360@azpm.org and let us know what you think. We'll see you next week.